Hi, this is Julian for Production Expert. This video is part of a larger piece that's over on the site where I'm going to be using this bus compressor in its intended role as a bus compressor on a mix. The mix I'm going to be using it on is this. Kind of Foo Fighters-y sounding track. And if you want to hear that as uncompressed WAVs, so you can really hear the subtleties of this bus compressor in use, then head over to the site, use the card that's on the screen now. So I'm going to be showing this as in use sort of in slightly more forthright mode, so you can really hear the stuff coming across, because after all, this is YouTube, and I'm going to be using it on some drums. So what I've got here is I've got some drums from that track, sound like this. And the Townhouse bus compressor, it's very familiar in terms of its control set. It's kind of an SSL bus compressor. It's certainly got the same controls as an SSL bus compressor. And if, like me, you're used to using one of those, you can get predictable results pretty quickly. However, it sounds different. And in terms of the sound, well, I mean, this is pretty subtle, actually, especially for YouTube. But if I just bring this in, it's got some pretty moderate compression settings. Not no compression at all, but very little. And just listen, if you can, for a sort of timbre difference, particularly in the snare drum. There's kind of like a bit of a sort of a darkness to it and a bit of a mid-range push, low mid-range push. So listen out for that. And it's kind of like a bit of a thickness that's added, which I kind of quite like. Now, here with these very moderate settings, something that I could do actually is I could come over here to this headroom setting. Now, here you can kind of push the compressor further into or out of compression without changing your settings by pulling this around. And if And with a bit more compression running, if I pull the release out of auto and into one of the normal time constants, you can see that this SSL style auto setting, it's got a multi-stage release, and it takes an awful long time to come back to zero compared to, let's stick it on maybe 0.6. And you see how quickly that comes back. And even on 1.2. Bit longer, but still comes back. On auto, you see it comes back relatively quickly, but then it takes an awful long time for the very last bit to happen. And you see that slows right down there. And that's kind of part of the sound of one of these compressors. Now, I think we probably need to make this work a little harder. So if I come over into this preset that I've saved here, what we'll start to hear straight away compared to without is a bit more length in the snare. Also, if you notice, it's much, much louder. And that's because of this relatively long attack time that I've got set here. And I'm still working in auto for release. And yeah, some quite heavy-duty compression happening already. I see a little bit of makeup going to come away. But hopefully you can hear the whole time there's that sort of timbral shift. It's got a real kind of like mid-range push that's quite noticeable. So if we come over onto this last setting here we're really into heavy compression. So if I start like this, and what you'll hear straight away is kind of loads more movement on the cymbals. But way ahead of that is this real build-in ambience that you're getting from this very short release. So with this attack time, if I change this attack time, you'll hear how that's really closing up the transient. So there we've got some examples of the BX Townhouse bus compressor, all the way from light, transparent compression all the way through to really heavy-duty stuff. Now head over to the site if you want to hear this in use on a mix.